Hello everyone, I am Mr. Greencap. It started with the burning of a single paper doll. The result: one student died of fright, and the other went mad. Today we look at a true record of terror. But remember, treat this as just a story. Simply a story and nothing more. So sit back, relax, and let's open the file. Our witness is Yu, an 18-year-old from Nanning. He says the event left a wound in him that will never heal. A warning he urges to anyone flirting with the unknown: you must carry respect with you like a key or a light. For him, the reminder is a building near Wuxiangling metro station. Exeter Fine, a structure so shrouded in creeping vines it looks less like architecture and more like a forgotten tombstone. 2 years have passed. It still stands, untouched, as if time itself is afraid to touch it. The story begins in July, Nanning, Arshisen. Yu and his 2 closest friends were drowning in the pressure of a top-tier high school. Their only escape was during breaks when their teacher let them use the classroom's interactive whiteboard. One day, a classmate played videos of urban explorers in abandoned buildings. That's when Yu saw it. A video about that building. The tombstone he passed every single day. His childhood friend, a girl we'll call Xiao Hong, nudged him. "Yu, isn't that on your way to school? What's even in there? Have you ever gone in?" He hadn't. But the question, once asked, wouldn't leave. It planted itself in his mind, a seed of curiosity wrapped in unease. Now, Yu considered himself a materialist, a rationalist, ghosts, spirits, the supernatural. To him, they were the products of fear and ignorance, stories for the dark. This belief was his armor, worn proudly like his school badge. Along with his other friend, Xiao An, the 3 of them, a 2-boy, 1-girl trio bonded since childhood, decided it would be nothing more than a Friday evening adventure, a way to blow off steam. They convinced themselves the setting sun would keep the shadows at bay. "It's just an empty building," Yu told himself. "What's the worst that could happen?" This, you would later understand, was the first and most fatal mistake. They met after school, backpacks slung loosely over their shoulders. Yu wore his standard blue-black uniform, already feeling the evening humidity cling to the fabric. Xiao Hong, who usually wore her hair down, had it in a tight, severe ponytail. "Makes me feel braver," she said, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. On her wrist was the silver bracelet her grandmother had given her as a child, a piece said to ward off ill spirits. Its cool weight a small comfort. Xiao An carried a heavy-duty flashlight bought from a hardware store, its beam strong enough to cut through the deepest dark. Yu carried his cigarette lighter, a habit his parents hated, its metallic click a familiar sound of defiance. The area around the metro exit was quiet, almost deserted at this hour. The building loomed ahead of them, 7 stories of concrete grimness, windows like sightless eyes. They avoided the main entrance, too conspicuous, and instead slipped through a tangle of weeds and broken fencing into a rear doorway, the darkness swallowing them whole. The smell hit them first. Not just the expected damp and mold, but something else layered underneath. Something that made the back of Yu's throat tighten. The heavy, cloying, sweet rot scent of burned incense ash. It was a temple smell, a funeral smell, utterly out of place in this derelict shell. It felt like breathing in memory itself, and it made Yu's stomach turn with a primal revulsion. Inside, the gloom was immediate and total, a tangible thing that pressed in from all sides. Only a traditional Z-shaped staircase led upwards into the murk, flanked by dark openings that might have once been employee dormitories. Xiao An's flashlight beam was a desperate, shaky lance in the void, trembling as it swept over blistered paint, crumbling walls, and shadows that seemed to flinch away only to gather again behind them. Every step they took crunched on rubble and debris, the sound impossibly loud, tearing through the profound silence like a series of small screams. The building seemed to groan around them, settling its weight with a sigh that came from nowhere and everywhere. On the 3rd-floor landing, a wave of cold air erupted from the black mouth of a dormitory doorway. It was July, sweat still beading on their temples. But this chill was different. It sank into their bones, a deep marrow, freezing cold that had no business in the summer night. Cobwebs shivered on the walls as if in a breeze, yet the air was utterly still. Then, a sound, a soft, high giggle like a child's, but stripped of all warmth, all joy. It echoed in the stairwell, seeming to come from above, from below. From the walls themselves they froze. Xiao Hong's hand flew out and locked onto Yu's forearm, her nails digging in through his sleeve with surprising strength. The silver bracelet on her wrist pressed cold against his skin, and he could feel her whole arm trembling. "Let go, you're hurting me," he hissed, the pain sharp and grounding. Her grip loosened, but only slightly, her fingers still viced tight on his arm. "It's just an animal," Yu said, his voice too loud in the stillness, betraying his own jumpiness. "A bird got trapped, or a rat. Don't be so jumpy." He was pleading with himself as much as with her, Xiao An trying to live up to his role as the brave one. The protector swung his flashlight beam into the gaping room. The light revealed a wasteland of broken furniture, scattered trash, and layers of dust. But as the beam swept across the walls, they all saw them, and the breath caught in three throats at once: footprints. Not from modern sneakers. These prints were small, with a distinct, separate toe box, the unmistakable shape of a cloth shoe from another century. And they didn't just trail across the floor. They went up the wall, across the ceiling in a chaotic, impossible pattern, as if someone had walked on all surfaces without regard for gravity. A cold knot, dense and heavy, formed in Yu's gut. This isn't right. But his mind, ever the rationalist, raced for an anchor. A homeless person, he told himself firmly, clinging to the idea. A weird, artistic, possibly mentally ill homeless person with some strange paint or mud. That's all. It has to be. Pushing onward, their earlier bravado now thin and brittle. They reached a long, broad corridor on an upper floor, an open-plan office space, long abandoned. Desks lay overturned. Chairs were scattered like bones. Outside the filthy windows, night had fully fallen, sealing them in. The silence here was absolute, a thick cotton, wool pressing in on their ears, making the rush of their own blood deafening. Xiao Hong whispered, her voice barely a breath, "I want to go back now." "Come on," Xiao An argued, his own voice strained thin. "We're here now. Weekend cram school starts tomorrow. This is our only chance to see it all." His words sounded hollow, even to him. That's when the incense smell returned, stronger than ever, overwhelming. It wasn't just a scent now. It was a taste at the back of the throat, a burn in the eyes, so thick it felt solid, like they were wading through invisible smoke. And then they heard it, a crisp, distinct crackle pop. The sound of a small, vigorous fire, like paper burning brightly. It came from the far dark end of the corridor, where the flashlight beam barely reached. Yet, when they stared, straining their eyes into that pooled darkness, there was no flicker of orange light, no glow, nothing but the sound of burning, holding their breath, hearts hammering against their ribs. They crept toward the sound, drawn by a morbid curiosity that overrode their screaming instincts to flee. As they neared a specific office doorway, the burning sounds abruptly faded and stopped, as if snuffed out by an unseen hand. Xiao An, hand shaking so badly the light jittered on the floor, raised his flashlight, its beam cutting into the room like a knife. In the center of the empty, dust-choked space stood a funeral paper effigy. Let me explain this object. In the West, you might burn symbolic things for the dead, notes, perhaps. In parts of the East, there's a practice of burning meticulously crafted paper replicas, houses, cars, money, even servants. These are meant for the deceased to use in the next world. They are vessels of intent, of respect, conduits for memory and care. But think of a marionette left on a deserted stage, long after the audience has gone home. If something, a consciousness unmoored, a soul with no home of its own, adrift in the cold currents between worlds, were to find such an empty purpose, built vessel in a forgotten place, it might just climb inside. It's not demonic possession. It's more like a squatter finding the perfect, abandoned dollhouse. The effigy becomes its body. The place it's left becomes its domain, its only piece of territory in a world that has forgotten it. This one was a horror of crude artistry. Its head was cocked at a perfect, unnatural 90-degree angle, as if its neck had been broken. Its face was a blank white oval, save for a lurid, bright red slash of a mouth, painted in a cruel upward curve. It had no eyes, just dark, hollow sockets that seemed not to reflect light, but to drink in the flashlight beam and reflect back a deeper, more absolute darkness. It wore tattered robes in faded silks and rough gray cloth, the finery of the grave gone to ruin, and it was moving. Not much, just a gentle rhythmic sway. Left, right, left, right, left, right, right. There was no draft. The air was dead and still as a tomb. It's the wind from the hallway, Xiao An stammered, the lie paper thin and obvious in his trembling voice. A cross breeze. A new sound began, a dry, scraping shusha shusha, the sound of stiff paper folding, of brittle silk dragging across concrete. The effigy's backwards bent knees shifted, its paper legs whispering against each other, and it began to glide forward, not walking but sliding across the floor, as if on an invisible track, its tattered hems fluttering silently, as if in a private, unfelt breeze. The shusha shusha grew louder, faster, a dreadful rhythm matching its slow, relentless approach. Xiao Hong's scream was a wire of pure panic snapping in the silence, short and sharp and utterly terrified. "Go, run," Yu yelled, the words tearing from his throat, his precious materialism crumbling into dust around him. But before their muscles could obey the command, a voice seeped into the room. It didn't come from the effigy. It came from the very walls, the floor, the ceiling. It was cold, flat, and layered with a chorus of faint echoes that made it sound like many voices speaking in chilling unison. Stay. Terror for Xiao An, twisted instantly into a blind, reactive rage, a fight response roaring to life, with a guttural shout that was more fear than fury. He lunged forward and kicked the paper figure squarely in the chest. There was a dry, splintering crunch of bamboo framing. The effigy was impossibly light, insubstantial. It flew backward, as if weightless, collapsing in a crumpled heap against the far wall, a gaping hole torn in its paper torso, its grotesque head lolling. Seeing it lying there, broken and still, a shaky, false courage flooded you. The spell was broken. It was just a thing, a creepy, stupid thing made of paper and sticks. The fear began to recede, replaced by a swelling embarrassment at their own panic. "See, nothing. See," he said aloud, forcing a tone of calm he didn't feel into his voice. "It's nothing, just paper and sticks. The wind, maybe, or vibrations from the metro underground. Trick of the light." He was rebuilding his rational world, brick by shaky brick. Xiao An was panting, his face pale but flushed with the afterburn of adrenaline and a sudden, sharp, shame-fueled anger. He glared at the helpless heap with contempt. "Disgusting junk," he spat. The words venomous, "Scared the hell out of me. Stupid thing." He turned to you, eyes glittering in the flashlight. "Backscatter. Your lighter, you." "Give it here." On autopilot, mind still numb with the shift from terror to shaky relief, you pulled the lighter from his pocket and handed it over. Xiao An flicked the wheel once, twice. On the third try, a small, steady flame sprang to life. He knelt, touched the flame to the edge of the effigy, torn silk robe. Fire bloomed. But the flames, they were wrong. They burned with a sickly, phosphorescent green at their core. A color that spoke of chemistry sets and bad dreams, not natural combustion. In that ghastly, wavering light, the effigy's painted red mouth seemed to widen, to deepen, stretching into a knowing, grotesque grin. And the smell, oh the smell, it was that same incense, magnified 1,000 times into a palpable fog, mixed now with the acrid, choking stench of burning hair and something underneath, something sweetly rotten, like overripe fruit left in the sun. It was the smell of a sacred offering turned toxic, of reverence curdled into blasphemy. Xiao Hong, sobbing quietly now, never let go of U.S. arm. He would find deep, bloody crescents from her nails etched into his skin later, a permanent reminder of her grip. They fled, not looking back, stumbling and crashing down the dark stairs through the clutching weeds, bursting out into the sterile electric light of the metro station plaza. The world felt surreal, too bright, too normal. The station clock said 8 p.m. It felt like a lifetime had passed. They parted with hollow, shell-shocked goodbyes, unable to meet each other's sighs, each carrying a silent, growing dread back into their separate lives, a seed of horror now planted deep within. For Yu, the true haunting began the moment his own front door closed behind him, locking him in with the silence of his own home. The adventure was over. The story he would learn had only just begun. Yu tried to go home as if it were any other day. He tried to eat the dinner left for him, the food tasteless as ash on his tongue. He tried to do homework, the characters on the page swimming meaninglessly, but his mind was a trapped bird, fluttering wildly against the cage of his skull, replaying on a loop the green, tinged flames, that papery shusha-shusha sound, the feel of Xiao Hong's nails in his arm. He was a materialist. He repeated it to himself like a mantra, a prayer against the rising tide of doubt. It was paper, it was the wind, it was a prank, a coincidence, a shared hallucination from bad air. But the mantra had cracks, and through them seeped the visceral, unchanging memories, the physical cold that came from nowhere, the impossible footprints on the ceiling. His rational fortress had been breached, and doubt, cold and insidious, was seeping through the walls. That night, in his own bed on the 8th floor, with the familiar sounds of the city outside, the dread solidified from a feeling into a presence. He felt watched, not the casual observation of a parent checking in, but a fixed, patient, occupying stare from the darkness in the corner of his room where the streetlight didn't reach. It was a gaze with weight, with intention. He tossed and turned, pulling the covers over his head like a child, before throwing them off again, too hot, too cold. When exhaustion finally pulled him under, it was a thin and troubled sleep, full of formless chases and muffled sounds. He jolted awake in the dead of midnight, not from a noise, but from a silence so absolute it felt like a vacuum, a pressure on his eardrums. The usual nighttime hum of the city was gone, and then he felt it, the gaze, stronger than ever, focused on him from the window. He turned his head slowly, muscles protesting, toward the glass there. Pressed against the outside of the glass on the 8th floor was a face. It was flat, two-dimensional, like a cutout. A paper doll's face, just the upper half. The blank, white forehead. The two empty, black eye holes like pits. It was stuck to the window, motionless, staring directly at his bed. His breath hitched, frozen in his lungs. This is impossible. The thought was clean, sharp, rational. He was on the 8th floor. No ledge, no fire escape, no vines. Nothing but smooth glass and a sheer drop. He tried to move, to reach for the lamp on his bedside table, to break the spell with light. His fingers fumbled, clumsy with sleep and terror, for the switch. Click, nothing. The power was dead, though the digital clock on his desk had gone dark hours ago. He could only lie there, a prisoner in his own sheets, pinned by those two dark voids that held no reflection, no light, only a profound, absorbing emptiness. Minutes stretched like taffy, each second an eternity. Then, slowly, as if losing adhesion, the paper face peeled away from the glass, turning slightly in a non-existent wind, and vanished into the night, leaving only the black square of the window behind. When he finally dared to close his eyes, his body rigid with tension, the sound came, not from outside, but from right beside his pillow. So close he could feel the faint disturbance of air, shusha. Shusha, the soft, relentless, intimate friction of paper rubbing against paper. It followed him down into a shallow, feverish sleep where darkness had texture and shape. Morning brought no relief, only a deeper, more insidious corrosion of his reality. In the bathroom, the mirror was clouded with a thick, grayish condensation, like fine ash mixed with steam. He wiped it clean with his hand, leaving a swath of clarity. Seconds later, while he was brushing his teeth, fingerprints bloomed back on the surface, adult-sized, with a strange, granular texture, as if dipped in ash and glue. They were not his. He scrubbed again with a towel, hard. They returned, different ones. In new places, his blue-black school uniform hung neatly on the back of his chair. now bore a smudge of bright, rusty red on the collar, like cheap theatrical paint or dried ceremonial pigment. It wouldn't tea wash out. He had to run the collar under the tap and scrape at it with a nail brush, the abrasive, grating sound setting his teeth on edge. A mundane torture. The incidents were small but relentless. A campaign of petty terrorism, a few damp, dead leaves, the kind from the weeds outside the tombstone building. On his pillow each morning. The water in his toothbrush cup, once clear from the tap, turning a faint, cloudy pink by dawn, carrying that same underlying, cloying incense stench. These were not grand Hollywood hauntings. They were petty, violating notices, like a pest leaving droppings to mark its territory, or a bully leaving subtle, undeniable signs of intrusion. You fought back with logic, his voice in his head growing fainter each day. A draft brought the leaves from the balcony. The pipes are old. The water is rusty. I'm stressed. I'm not sleeping. I'm seeing things. His materialism was now a fortress under siege. And every strange event, no matter how small, was another stone cracking the walls. Another drip of water weakening the foundation. The worst was the dream. It wasn't a nightmare of monsters chasing him. It was worse. A dream of utter helplessness, of being a ghost in his own vision. He dreamed he was walking, compelled by an unseen force, through the familiar streets to Xiao Hong's house. Her front door swung open silently before him. He walked in, the house dark and still, knowing the layout like his own. He stood at the threshold of her bedroom, unable to cross it. She was asleep, but her expression was pinched, troubled, her eyelids fluttering. And there, standing right beside her bed, looming over her, was the paper effigy from the tombstone building. It reached out its pale, paper hands, fingers like blunt, empty tubes, and began to slowly lower them toward her exposed throat. You tried to scream, to charge in and shove it away. But his body was made of stone, rooted to the spot. No sound came from his straining throat, not even a whisper. He could only stand there, a powerless ghost in his own dream, frantically waving his arms, trying to catch her attention, to make her open her eyes. The effigy stopped, its head cocked at that impossible angle, rotated smoothly, mechanically toward him in the doorway. The blank eye sockets found him in the dark, and then it began to glide, shusha, its pace quickening, not toward the vulnerable Xiao Hong but toward him, faster and faster filling his vision. He woke with a convulsive gasp, sitting bolt upright, drenched in cold sweat, his heart hammered against his ribs like a frantic bird. And there, on his light-colored bed sheet, next to where he had lain, were 3 perfect gray handprints. They were the color of pale gray ash, and around their edges clung tiny brittle specks of what looked like paper pulp, like the residue from a shredded document. After that dream, Xiao Hong changed. She didn't answer his messages, read receipts on, but silence. She avoided him at school, taking different corridors, disappearing into crowds. Within days, she had blocked him on every social platform, her profiles vanishing from his lists. Confused, hurt, and now deeply afraid for her. You went to her house 3 times after school. Each time, the door remained closed, the windows dark, though he thought he saw a curtain twitch once on the 2nd floor. Soon after, he learned from his parents, who had heard from other parents, that her family had abruptly moved to Guangzhou. No forwarding address, no explanation. It felt like an amputation, a piece of his life and his history severed without warning or reason. Xiao An's fate was more violently, tragically clear. He fell ill the very night of their exploration, a fever that came on fast and spiked so high, his parents said he babbled and hallucinated. It developed into a severe, stubborn pneumonia that settled in his lungs and refused to leave. In the hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and sickness, Xiao An's face was waxy and thin against the white pillow. He gripped his hand with a clammy, desperate strength that belied his frailty. His eyes, glassy with fever and a fear that had nothing to do with infection, locked onto us. We shouldn't have gone, he whispered, his voice a ragged tear in the quiet room, each word an effort. I see it. Every time I close my eyes, in the corner of the room. Right now we pissed it off, didn't we? We lit its house on fire. You squeezed his friend's hand back, the last defender of a rational world that was crumbling around him. It is the infection talking, he said, his own voice sounding hollow and false even to himself. You breathed in bad mold, all that dust, that's all. The meds will work. You'll get better. He visited when he could, sat by the bed, played mobile games on silent, the glow of the screen a tiny island of normalcy in the sea of dread. But the pneumonia didn't improve, it deepened. A few weeks later, the news came in a phone call that left you numb. Xiao An had passed away in the night. The official cause was complications from pneumonia. You knew the real cause. They had burned the only home a lost thing had, and it had taken payment in flesh. The guilt was a physical weight, a stone lodged in his chest, crushing his breath. If I hadn't agreed to go, if I hadn't handed over the lighter, if I had stopped him, his worldview, already fractured by the strange events, now lay in pieces at his feet. There was no rational box to put this in. He broke down and confessed everything to his terrified, bewildered parents, the story pouring out of him in a chaotic, tearful rush. They took him to a temple in the older part of the city, to a monk with a kind but weary face, his eyes seeing much more than the physical room. Before you could utter a word of greeting, the monk looked at him, and then his gaze shifted slightly, passing through you to something standing just behind his left shoulder. A chill unrelated to the temple air swept down Yu's spine. You have disturbed a resident, the monk said, not as a question, but a statement of fact. You could only nod mute, as the story tumbled out of him in a shaken, stumbling rush. The monk listened, his expression growing graver with each detail. That place was its residence. You trespassed, assaulted its form, and then you burned its shell. It is anchorless now. It seeks a replacement, one of you. It is with you now. The monk's eyes flickered again to the space behind you, and he subtly shifted his posture, not facing it directly. I will not speak with it directly, its grievance is strong. I can only build a wall for you. He gave you a talisman, a small, tightly folded square of yellow paper, sewn into a red cloth pouch covered in dense, black ink sigils that swam before Yu's eyes. Keep this on you at all times. Do not open it. It will keep it from touching you directly, from making its marks on your world. But it will not leave. It will wait. I cannot resolve this matter. The offense is too deep. The talisman worked. In a way, the overt physical attacks. The face at the window, the ash handprints on the sheets, the leaves ceased abruptly. But the presence remained. A constant icy spot between his shoulder blades, exactly where the monk had looked. The feeling of being watched from just outside the periphery of his vision. A shape always retreating as he turned his head. The occasional faint whiff of incense in a closed car, or the sound of paper rustling in a silent room. He was safe, but in a cage of his own making, and the thing was right outside the bars, patient as stone. He carried the talisman like a condemned. Man carries a reprieve he knows is temporary. 2 years passed in this grim half-life, a state of suspended dread. He functioned, he studied, he graduated, but the world had lost its color, its certainty. He learned, through distant family connections, that Xiao Hong was not just in Guangzhou, but in a discreet psychiatric facility there. He saved money, bought a train ticket and traveled to see her. She was a faded photograph of herself. Thin, her hair lifeless, her eyes holding a distance that had nothing to do with the bland, sunny room they sat in. They made strained small talk about nothing, the weather, the food. After an hour, as he prepared to leave, despair clawing at him, she finally spoke. Her voice a dry whisper, her eyes fixed on her own twisting hands. That night, after we got home, my bedroom door opened by itself. I was so scared. I pretended to be asleep, to breathe evenly. I peeked through my lashes, and it was in my doorway. She swallowed, her throat working visibly. It was a paper man, but it wasn't tea like the one in the building. This one, it was wearing your jacket, your blue-black school jacket, your school pants. Its face, It was your face, but wrong stiff, and it was beckoning to me. With your hand, Yu's blood turned to slush in his veins. The helpless witness at her doorway, he had seen this very scene, but from the other side, from the perspective of the thing wearing his face. A dizzying, terrifying vertigo seized him, the world tilting on its axis. If it was wearing my face for her, what face does it wear for me? What does my own face look like to it now? He muttered a choked excuse about the bathroom and stumbled out into the hall, leaning against the cool wall before making his way to the visitors' washroom. He lunged for the sink, bracing himself on the porcelain, and slowly, fearfully looked up into the mirror. His own familiar face stared back, pale, dark circles under eyes wide with a panic he could no longer control. It was him. For a second, relief flooded him. Then, slowly, against his will, as if strings were attached to the corners of his mouth, he felt the muscles in his own cheeks twitch and pull. His reflection, his mouth began to curl up at the corners. A stiff, wide, utterly joyless smile stretched across his face, distorting his familiar features into a mask. It was the exact smile painted on the paper effigy in the tombstone building. And for a fleeting, heart-stopping second, the edges of his reflection seemed to blur and grow thin, to lose depth like parchment held too close to a flame, threatening to curl and blacken at the edges. He was not just being haunted, he was being studied, copied, drafted. His identity, his life, was being meticulously traced, prepared for use as a replacement shell. His family, witnessing his slow unraveling and now armed with this new horror, acted in true desperation. They turned away from the city as temples and sought help far off the grid. In the older ways, they found an old master living in a remote mountain village, a man known not for building barriers, but for resolving entanglements. The master's home was a simple structure that smelled of dried herbs, old wood, and peace. He listened to Yu's story from beginning to end without interruption, his eyes closed, as if watching a different screen. When Yu finished, voice hoarse, the old man let out a long, slow breath, as if releasing a great weight. But the city monk was not wrong, he said, his voice a soft rasp. He is a mason. He builds walls. I am a keeper of gates. I open doors and sometimes I close them, he explained, not with the dramatic language of demons and exorcisms, but with the weary logic of disparate ecology. The spirit was not ancient evil. It was a homeless one, a man who died with no rights, no descendants to remember him, no tablet to hold his name. His soul wandered, lost in the between places, growing cold and desperate. At funeral sites, in the trash heaps behind paper offering shops, he found the effigies thrown away after use, empty vessels made for the dead, imbued with the intent to house a spirit. He climbed into one for shelter from the void. He was discarded, thrown into that building with the rest of the urban trash. It became his home, the only home he had known in decades. The master looked at Yu, his gaze deep and sad. "You children," he said, his tone not accusatory, but terribly infinitely weary. "You broke into his home. You mocked his form. You beat him, and then you burned his house down around him. All he wants is what you have, what you take for granted, a home, a solid, warm, living body to keep out the cold of non-existence. He is not evil. He is desperate, and he is trying with the only means he understands to take yours, to replace you." The ritual the master performed that evening was nothing dramatic. No shouts, no ringing bells, no flares of holy light. It was a long, quiet murmuring in an ancient dialect, a careful burning of specific pungent herbs, whose smoke coiled in particular patterns, a slow, deliberate negotiation written in air and intention. It was not a violent exorcism. It was an eviction notice paired with a compassionate relocation offer. The master was speaking to the squatter spirit, acknowledging its pain, its grievance, its right to exist, and then, with firm grace, showing it a path away from the world of the living, to a place where it could find proper rest, not a stolen shell. When it was over, the master looked exhausted, as if he had aged decades in the hours they'd been there. He sat heavily, wiping his brow. It is done. He has listened. He has moved on. The one you called Xiao An, his body was too weakened by illness, his spirit, hold loosened by fear. The homeless one saw an open door, a vacant house, and took it. That is why he died. You and the girl were stronger, or your talisman bought you time. Or perhaps you were just luckier. Your friend paid the price for all of you. The change was immediate and profound. The constant icy pressure between US shoulder blades, a sensation he had grown so accustomed to he barely registered it anymore, vanished. It was like a steel band that had been constricting his chest for 2 years suddenly snapped. The world felt suddenly, shockingly light, airy, real. The silence in the mountain village was just silence, empty and clean, not a pregnant void filled with watching. But scars, as they say, remain. Xiao Hong eventually recovered enough to leave the facility and live a quiet life. But she will never ever speak of that time, and a shadow lingers in her eyes that wasn't there before. Xiao An is gone forever, a hole in the universe where a lively friend once stood. So now, when Yu walks past that vine-choked building near Wushangling Station, he doesn't just shudder at a scary memory. He quickens his step for a different reason, a deeper understanding. The monk in the city temple gave him a talisman. Think of it not as a magic charm, but as a temporary do not disturb sign taped to his soul. It sent a message, this one is off limits for now. It built a fence, a holding cell. But a fence doesn't remove what's lurking on the other side. It just postpones the confrontation, allows the problem to fester. It treated the symptom, not the disease. The old master in the mountain village did something fundamentally different. He didn't put up a fence. He opened a gate. What he performed wasn't an exorcism in your classical sense. It was a relocation, a diplomatic solution. He negotiated, found that lost, desperate soul a ticket to a different address. A proper place where it wouldn't need to covet a living person's body. He solved the root cause, the spirit's homelessness and grievance. This is the core of the story, the lesson etched into Yu's bones. That paper effigy wasn't a demon from hell or a vengeful zombie. It was a homeless soul wearing the only clothes it could find. Clothes literally made for the dead. You don't need ancient curses or possessed dolls to explain its anger. See it through a simpler, darker, more human logic. You trespassed into a squatter's only shelter, mocked his appearance, and then burned his only coat. What would any desperate, cornered being do? He tried to take yours. Xiao An lost his coat. Xiao Hong almost lost hers. You, by chance and later by intervention, was lucky. This was never a supernatural haunting in the storybook sense. It was a tragic property dispute, a clash over territory and survival between the comfortably living and the desperately dead. The building near Wushangling Station still stands, shrouded in its green veil. It might be truly empty now, a shell within a shell. Or maybe, with the original tenant relocated, a new, different tenant has moved in. You never know. These places are rarely ever truly empty. The lesson you learned is simple, and he offers it to you when you see a building that looks like a tombstone. Trust the design. That itself is nature, or something else. Way of posting a sign. You don't need to read the characters. The message is in the feeling, in the instinct to look away. It reads, private property, occupied, trespass at your own risk. Wisdom. In the face of the unknown, isn't about knowing how to fight ghosts. It's about cultivating the sense to know which doors are never meant to be opened, and the respect to leave them closed. This is Mr. Green Cap. The file is closed.